everyone. It is a pleasure to be the moderator on this roundtable on best practice in intercultural mediation, specializing in addressing female genital mutilation. I want to give a very warm welcome to our speakers, our female speakers, and to one male speaker. I don't want to go over what has already been said, but I would like to remind people, just for context, that female genital mutilation is without a shadow of doubt, as highlighted by our previous speakers and as will be insisted upon throughout today and tomorrow. It is a form of gender violence that is explicitly recognized in the 2030 Agenda, in the Istanbul Convention, and in the United Nations Strategy for Equal Opportunities that was approved in January 2021 by the European Parliament. Female genital mutilation, just like other forms of violence against women, expresses discrimination and a situation of inequality and abusive relationships of power that women and children who suffer these violences are immersed in, because we all suffer these forms of violence to a greater or a lesser extent, with greater trauma or on a more indirect level. Female genital mutilation is perpetuated by the transmission of power inequalities and inequalities in power and resources and possibilities from one generation to the next. Prevention, therefore, lies in avoiding the transmission of female genital mutilation as a harmful practice against the physical, psychological, and sexual integrity of women, which we must recall is still encoded as a cultural obligation. Both the Grevio report, which was mentioned by the previous speaker on the evaluation of the application of the Istanbul Convention in the various countries, and the European Parliament itself have underlined the need for special protection for women, adolescents, and children belonging to ethnic minorities, as they are particularly vulnerable to the various forms of violence against women, and more specifically, female genital mutilation. And since we are publicly considering something which we already knew existed, there are other forms of gender violence or violence on the whole, which is human trafficking for sexual exploitation purposes. Everything I have mentioned, and that has been mentioned by the previous speaker, has to be set within a general framework where we recognize the priority of prevention and protection against female genital mutilation. But it is also very important to bear in mind that this general framework itself is not enough, because the challenge of all public policies lies in implementation. And as has also been mentioned by previous speakers, this is sometimes seen as a secondary aspect, when in fact it is the core of public policies, implementation and the practical development of everything that can be done and needs and should be done. This is precisely the underlying theme of this roundtable, where we're going to talk about how to ensure access to existing resources through the UNAF program, for instance. We're going to talk about how to establish public-private collaborations in the Aminata network and the hospital we'll be hearing from. Also, how to foster peer foundation for women's health research and development. So I will now be giving the floor one by one to each of our speakers, and we're going to be starting with Samira, Karmoun, Touil, and Fatoumata, Diaraye, Diallo, both of whom work in the area, in the Department of Cultures, Genders and Sexualities of the UNAF. Samira Karmoun is a community mediator, and Fatoumata Diaraye Diallo. She is the president of an association of women from Guinea-Conakry in Madrid. So both of them have a wealth of knowledge of their communities, and so we're going to give them the floor to hear from them. There are 5 speakers, so you have about 15 or 20 minutes each to hold a subsequent debate and question. Go ahead, Samira and Fatoumata. You will each be speaking individually. Go ahead, whoever you would like to start.
Buenos días.
Bienvenidas a todas y a todos. En principio, nosotros, sí, como bien ha dicho usted, nosotros pertenecemos
Welcome you all. I have to say that I'm part of UNAF as a mediator specializing in sexual and reproductive health. And we wanted to approach this presentation from a point of view of the project that was mentioned by my colleague before. Yes, I'm going to share a presentation with you so that you can follow the different axes of our project. I wanted to share with you our project because it's a beautiful work. It was highly challenging, but it's really necessary because we work within a multicultural society, and we think it's completely necessary. I don't know if you can see my screen. Great. As my colleague said, our project is a service of cultural intercultural mediation, specializing in sexual and reproductive health. We are working in different areas of reproductive health, but in this case, Fatoumata, my colleague Fatoumata, and me, we within UNAF, we are working in promoting sexual and reproductive rights as essential rights, such as the right to life, right to mutual respect, right to decisions, rights to have the attention of health services, right to information, and to the services that are aligned with our needs. There are lots of women who don't know, for example, anti-conception means, and from our service, we want to provide all the information possible to these women, and we want to guide them towards the different health services available throughout the time in which they need to have access to medical care and attention. We deal with women coming from different cultures, and they have the right to have different beliefs as long as they are not against any human rights. And they all have a right to sexual and reproductive health within the culture in which we are raised. Influences our sexual practices because the cultural structure is essential, and the right to implement in one way or another our own right. Lots of women do not know that they have rights. Depends a lot on the place we come from. There are countries in which women are not visible in society, to say it some way. There are also different practices carried out in different cultures, and this is something that is continued generation after generation. Sometimes they are even considered in local laws, and sometimes they do not comply with the sexual health rights, and they can even develop gender violence. And in those cultures, people understand that they can continue to carry out those practices even if they are against their right to health. Therefore, our main aim is to let women know which are their rights so that they are ready to say no to a cultural practice such as female genital mutilation. That's the subject we are dealing with today. We want them to decide about as mothers, for example, to decide about their children. We want them to know and respect their bodies. Lots of women do not know that what they can feel or what they cannot. They don't know that they can feel certain sensations or pain. They have the right to know the kind of infections and sexual diseases they are exposed to. They have to know the access they have to family planification or to sexual health resources. Women from different procedures have the culture of having lots of children, and sometimes we don't know whether the problem is that they don't understand that they have a problem, or if they don't know that they have access to a sexual health a plan or to a family planification service. So we think it's essential to give that information to women. We want to give access to the different planification ways. We find that there are lots of women and children who cannot decide. They cannot recognize the consequences of their act. And how can they say no if they are going to suffer, if they are going to suffer consequences? So this leads to situations in different countries with different cultures, different religions, and different languages, in which these women are treated, we could say, in such a way. They face lots of challenges regarding sexual health, such as racism, fears, taboos. We find women who don't know which are their rights, which resources they have access to, and they find a cultural barrier. And the main barrier is the one that prevents them from having access to this information. Work precarity, for example, when you don't know a language, you accept whatever to find a job, but that's a way of violence as well. Violence has lots of different ways. We come from different cultures and we find lots of women which are hidden behind their husbands, and they don't have the culture of going out, carrying out their lives without any dependence on their husbands, both economically and socially. And this is one of the origins of these situations. the lack of information regarding access to health services. There are lots of people who don't know how to deal with the situation of these women because they don't know their cultures, they don't know the challenges they're facing. And we think it's important to establish a way of cultural mediation to go over those barriers they find. Therefore, intercultural mediation is a warranty of the rights. It's a link between the people and the institutions and the services and the needs and the support that can be provided to them. We need a professional, social, and political involvement because here we find a very comprehensive situation, and we need to act in a coordinated way to provide warranties and a comprehensive access to health and sexual services. From the intercultural approach, we need to provide information of women's health. We want to make it easier for them to access the health system. We try to adapt to their needs. We try to overcome challenges and taboos, and those taboos that go along with the cultures in which they are involved. We want them to know their rights and to know their bodies. We want to foster the women's own autonomy. Women are sometimes hidden behind men, and they don't know who to address, where to ask for information, and most of the times they are hidden behind their couples, their husbands, and this is the way they survive. And they are closed in their family nucleus. So we think that we need to give them access to resources to guarantee their sexual and reproductive health. And what's specialized intercultural mediation? As far as we understand, it is the comprehension and communication between women and the health services and professionals, because sometimes professionals do not know the challenges women face when they arrive to our country. We are talking about different cultures. We are talking about different customs, and that they are integrated in our bodies, and this creates a certain conflict with regard to social and health services. So we think we need to provide guidance, specialized guidance regarding sexual and reproductive health, because they don't have the culture we have here in Spain or in the rest of Europe. So there's a need to provide this information in a way that everybody understands that they have the right to be to receive health services and to understand that this is a service provided for free, because we have to understand that not all women can pay for a cultural mediator. Within our project, we provide language interpreting in 17 languages. And we've worked a lot to build a team with the engagement of confidentiality, neutrality, and impartiality. This project is funded by the Department of Social Policies, Families, and Health. And what we would like to explain is how the project was built. As Nerea mentioned, we adapted to their needs. Each woman has a right to recognize herself as a woman and to understand the rights she has regarding her sexual and reproductive health. Our intercultural mediation is a confidential and free service, including communication services and providing access to health services with all the warranties. And always with a gender approach. As Nerea mentioned, we've implemented a pilot project, and during the time it's been working, we can say that we had a very successful implementation. It's focused in sexual and reproductive health with a gender approach. We've conducted a great work looking for different cultural mediators, generating exchanges of information and providing knowledge within this sector. It was a very successful experience with a wide focus on people specialized in the area and addressed to people working in different languages and providing comprehensive attention to women. Our working framework was implemented considering confidentiality, mediation, and the needs of women who are trying to have access to health services. Our idea was to promote access and establish a way of mediation and communication so that women could explain what they were going through. Some women do not want to come to health services because of the language barrier, because of the communication barrier, because they are coming and they they forecast that the health professionals won't understand what they are going through. So this special service, specializing in sexual and reproductive health, is working. It's a service for free, and it includes mediation, interpreting, and gynecologist, and all the services involved in health and reproductive, in sexual and reproductive health. It includes midwives, for example. Within our network, in the section intercultural mediation, you can find a form that you can fill yourself. A user herself can fill it, or also a professional. There are different entities who address our entity because they act as mediators with women who want to have access to our services, and these professionals fill the form. We contact the user, we identify the needs they have, and in a delay of 24-48 hours, we contact them and we find out the information necessary to provide the health service needed. We try to explain the situation to the professional that is going to be serving that woman, and we take into account that sometimes women that address us do not know the role of intercultural mediators, and this is also a barrier. Sometimes we don't even know if they are going to allow us in the doctor's cabinet, for example. And this is something we have to work in as well. We have to explain that it's the right of all women to have access to a mediator who makes communication easier between the professionals and the patients. Our work will shorten the time of the service and will help making a successful diagnosis as well. So this is something that we have to understand. If the user understands that our service is confidential, she will feel more comfortable. That's much better than coming to the doctor's cabinet with the support of their children, which is not a comfortable situation. Having their child interpreting or translating conversations within in this area of sexual or reproductive health with professionals who have to deal with difficult and challenging situations. We face cases in which we receive women who are victims of gender violence and victims of female genital mutilation. Today, Fatoumata has also come with us as she has worked as a mediator in different cases, and she can give us more information on female genital mutilation. Fatoumata, you have the floor now.
Te veo en la...
Vale, buenos días.
Te veo.
Sí. Vale.
Muy bien. Adelante.
Hola,
es tu turno, Fatoumata.
Fatoumata,
Vale.
you have the floor now. You have to open your microphone. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Vale, me llamo Fatoumata, Diaraye, ya me han presentado. Trabajo con UNAF y también en Voces.
I've been introduced already. I work within UNAF and in another institution working with the immigration and refugees.
Samira y Nerea, mis compañeros ya casi han dicho todo, pero yo voy a enfocarme.
I think my colleagues have said everything already, but I'm going to focus on female genital mutilation and comprehensive care because this is the topic that I have been working on lately with them. I've been working with them for very many years. It's a great job they're doing with a wonderful team that works really well, to be honest. And throughout this time, what we have been doing is guiding the women, because when we talk about health, sexual health, reproductive health, female genital mutilation as well, because we are survivors of female genital mutilation, so there are several women among our team whom what we do is guide the women, which is why we're trying to work on comprehensive care to ensure that they feel free and open and at ease to express what they feel, to share their needs and to tell us what we can do to help them in this aspect and in our guidance. And then when women, for instance, go to the doctor, they struggle sometimes to express themselves, partly because of fear, because of the barriers. They don't know whether they are in a safe environment, and doctors lack the information they need to know how to help these people. That, for me, is what I found most interesting, because the doctors often don't have a lot of information about female genital mutilation, about how the women who have suffered it live and how they can help them, as well as understanding how the system works. With this comprehensive guidance, we aim to also follow up on these women, not just provide them with guidance, medical guidance initially, but to really follow it through, to help them to express themselves, to explain and understand how they feel and what they need. That is the work that we have been developing, especially in relation to female genital mutilation. And in relation to this topic, women really struggle to express their pain, because it is a kind of pain that they have already overcome. It's a pain that they've already been through. So to overcome the taboo that they have, I often have to go with them several times and really make a lot of questions. And because I speak the same language, they feel safe with me. They feel that they can express how they are, how they feel, how they're progressing. Oh, would you like to moderate, Noelia? Oh, well, I just want to share something else, if you don't mind, if I may. I want it to be clear that our intercultural mediation service focusing on reproductive health has a gender approach, ultimately with the goal of preventing gender violence, all forms, including female genital mutilation. But as people are mentioning in the chat box, it would be necessary and it would be important for this to cover different spheres, not only women's reproductive and sexual health, but that's the field we're working on for the time being. And we would like to now make a claim from all of you to knock on the doors of the people upstairs, and to claim the service that we think we need. It really makes communication more important. It really helps to provide access to healthcare for all women because we are talking about health, and health is a crucial aspect, especially women's health, because we as women often hold the reins of society, so to speak, because without women, a society would not be able to grow. That's why we believe that mediation is necessary, and we need everybody's support to ensure that this profession is seen as what it is, as a profession. And if you have any questions, any remarks, or anything, we're open to read them through the chat box, or we have our email address where we are open to all questions. Thank you very much. Well, thanks to both of you. And to those of you who are with us in this webinar, please feel free to send any questions through the chat box. But there will also be a discussion session at the end of our roundtable where all of our speakers will be available for questions. We're doing very well for time because both of you have only done 30 minutes, which I'm very grateful for. So we can now hear from our next speaker, who is Aminata Souko. I hope my pronunciation is correct, because ultimately a name is an identity. So I do think it's very important to pronounce names properly. They really need to be said correctly. Aminata Souko is the leader of the Aminata Network, which strives for prevention and guidance of the victims of female genital mutilation. She is therefore a person who works very specifically in this field of FGM that concerns us today. So go ahead, Aminata, it will be a pleasure to hear from you. You have a maximum of 20 minutes.
Muchísimas gracias por la invitación. Muchas gracias, UNAF, por esta magnífica jornada. Y muchas gracias a todos los oyentes que están aquí hoy. Mi nombre es Aminata Souko y soy la técnica de acción social en Farmamundi y la presidenta de Red Aminata. Al mismo tiempo soy agente de salud de base comunitaria especializada en mutilación genital femenina. Y también colaboro con el Hospital PSET como mediadora intercultural con el tema de la mutilación genital femenina.
And I work together with Hospital Dr. Peset in the field of female genital mutilation. This aggression, I suffered it myself when I had only a few months of life. Once I got married, I suffered gender violence as well. And after my experience and all the suffering I've gone through, I decided to take the reins of my life. And nowadays, my past is not marking my present and neither my future, because I decided to take the reins of my life. Through the association Red Aminata, we work in prevention and guidance to all victims of female genital mutilation, whether they need a clitoris reconstruction or not. If you allow me, I'm going to share my screen. I don't like talking with slides, but sometimes it's supporting. Sometimes an image is more useful. Our association is called Yo Aminata. Yo Aminata is our dialect, which means Aminata network. We are a network of women who support each other. And thanks to all the team of the network Aminata, we've realized that when you work with your heart, things change. We started working in the creation of this association after my own experience, because I suffered female genital mutilation, and when I faced lots of difficulties after my forced marriage and gender violence I suffered, I decided to prevent all women from these violences. That's the origin of our association. It has my contribution, my own contribution, because I decided to go under a clitoris reconstruction. Not even my family doctor knew about the possibilities I had regarding this intervention. I went under this surgery in 2013, and in 2016, the unit of clitoris reconstruction was created here in the region of Valencia, and I offered myself voluntarily to provide support to women. And this unit, cooperating with Aminata Network, has become a great team. We work hand by hand, and we are reaching successful results, because this is something that affects women at a physical and psychological level, as my colleagues explained, and the treatment the same. The reconstruction is not only a simple surgery that we have to that has to be carried out through a gynecologist. This is a solution for victims in which different professionals are involved. Not no matter which professional can manage this kind of situation. Different professionals are needed within this area to overcome the wrong informations we receive, the lack of information as well, and there are different aspects that have to be dealt with. This is an issue that has to be treated in a very soft and careful way. After lots of years cooperating with this unit of the hospital, it was decided to create an association. The idea was that the job I was conducting as a volunteer became a paid job, because of the importance of supporting the women that approach this unit. On February 2020, our association was created, and here you can see the whole team. And together with the professionals of Hospital Dr. Peset, Kenikulova, and also the psychologist and sexologist that has provided support to women, the social worker, and the area of pediatrics. We've created a multidisciplinary network to work to provide support to women. And for this reason, in hospital, they were not able to hire me. They didn't have funding for that. Thanks to the cooperation of PharmaMundi, all the job I am carrying out and all the works I've been doing have been supported. In February this year, PharmaMundi cooperated with the Aminata network and with the hospital Dr. Peset, so that the work I'm conducting becomes a paid work. So I have to thank PharmaMundi. Thanks to them, I am being paid as a professional, and at the same time, I can make a living out of my work. So I have to thank the big team of PharmaMundi. Throughout this, I have to say that from 15th February until now, we have received 18 women in this unit. And there are already 5 women ready to undergo the surgery for clitoris reconstruction. So I have to thank all the team for their work. The cultural mediator is an essential role for the access to health of women. We speak Spanish, and we have lots of challenges when communicating with health professionals. And regarding female genital mutilation, it's even harder. But thanks to my role and the role of other colleagues of mine, we are making easier communication and support to all our sisters who are undergoing this surgery and the whole process which is involved. The process takes 1 year, and as this is a quick surgery in which women don't stay at hospital, I take charge of treatment. I go to women's houses, I provide care, I provide guidance regarding the pharmaceutical treatments, if we have to arrange other appointments with doctors, I help them with that, and I provide support with all the process. At the same time, they become linked to me, they come closer to me, and they start supporting other women as well. In Africa, we speak lots of dialects. I don't speak all dialects in Africa. And there are lots of women from different countries in which female genital mutilation is a practice. And when these women arrive to Spain and they don't understand the language, they find a big barrier, and they have lots of problems to express themselves and to explain what they are going through. When we approach people from Africa, it's a lack of respect if we look to the eyes of the other person. And here it's exactly the opposite. If you don't look to the eyes to the doctor, they think that you lack respect. And my job is to explain patients and these specificities and to provide support to health professionals as well. When we work like this, the result is successful, and women also who go under the reconstruction surgery are happy and satisfied with the result. I have to say that I was one of the first women that had the clitoris reconstructed, and for me it brought light to my life. There was a before and an after. It's not the same to have sexual relationships with pain or having sexual relationships with pleasures and enjoying it. So for me, it's been a great success, and doctors are doing a great job in providing happiness or giving happiness back to us. After all those processes, there's a big feeling of satisfaction. This, if you want to have more information, in our website and YouTube, we have a video on women who experience reconstruction surgeries, and they provided their witness, and their smile says everything. This is a video of the witnesses of women. In this video, they explain their experience, and in our association, it's very important the work we do as part of a network, working together with other colleagues that are fighting against female genital mutilation is essential, and we are engaged with the future of all women. We want, in the near future, we want to start working with a shelter home, because here in Spain, this practice, if this practice is not left behind because of tradition, it's going to left behind because of the penalties and the prison sentences. But we have to work in the culture and tradition that is followed in Africa. I suffered mutilation, and other family members suffered that in my family. But I am proud to say that other family members have left this tradition behind, that this is not a practice that is kept in my family anymore, because I explained to my family that it provides no benefits. And in February this year, my mother and my brother, who is going to be the inheritor of my family, as a head of my family, they decided to stop practicing mutilation. So I am really proud to say that my genealogy tree is going to be built free of this practice, free of female genital mutilation. And after all the suffering I went through, and after all the violence I suffered, my contribution to change the future of the girls in my family and of other women is the most important for me. Regarding this subject of female mutilation, we have to work with our heart. and lots of willing. And that's what I saw here in the hospital, in Valencia's hospital, the unit for reconstruction. The professionals are working with lots of heart. Melissa, who started working in this area, is unique. And I hope she comes back to the unit and to continue doing this job. I don't want to say that the people that are in the unit now are doing a good job, but Melissa was such a specialized professional and was so specialized in the area of female genital mutilation. She's become a Black woman with another color because she knows more of our traditions than many of African women. She's a big activist in the field of mutilation. I don't know if I forgot anything, but if it's the case, Melissa can add it. Thanks a lot for your words, Aminata. I don't know if we have some more time. I want to say very shortly that Aminata was very nervous today, but she did a great job. And I want to add something regarding my role in the organization. I'm still in the organization, but we wanted a professional to give continuous attention to girls, and my labor situation at this specific moment didn't allow me providing it. So I had to left that position, and I keep working within the association. And Aminata, as she said, identified this lack of professional support. She lived the reconstruction from a very traumatic point of view, and she decided to work to change that. I was working and I was aware of the challenges. I knew that the reconstruction surgery was not a physically isolated issue, and that there were lots of implications that had to be taken into account to give an answer to this reconstruction of this part of the body. That's when we started working, and we started cooperating with public and private associations. And Aminata started working with us, combining that with her job and doing a great effort to be able to provide all the support she provided. She's an example because she overcame a history of gender violence. She faced her community and managed to explain herself. She decided to make a change in her body. She never waived her African culture, but she decided to defend her body, and she's an example of success, of work, of effort. And when she provides her experience, all other women come to our service, address our service in a different way. We know when they need more time, more space, when they need to delay their appointments, and they feel more confident. That's what we wanted. We wanted to carry out a multidisciplinary work in which the patient is the focus of our work, and we have to stop thinking of them as patients and start thinking of them as women who have decided to start a process to overcome a situation and lots of very hard experience, harder than any experience that we go through here in Spain. Lots of cases of gender violence. I don't know if there are any other questions. I also wanted to mention that there's another important point in the reference unit, and it's sexual education and the approach of of sexual relationships as a couple relationship and the involvement of couples. And from the point of view of satisfaction of the women who come to our service have showed that the involvement of their couples is really positive. This, they know that when respect is not worked in Spain, they have no future, relationships have no future. Thanks a lot, Aminata, thanks a lot. Melissa, your intervention was not scheduled, but it's been wonderful to have you. The video is 14 minutes, so we don't have time to show it, but you can find it on our website. So I think that UNAF is already taking note of this and will be able to provide a link to the video. Thanks a lot for your interventions. And please leave nerves aside, because this time control allows us to have some time for discussion at the end of this round table. It will be around 1:45 if we keep close to the schedule. Apart from the comments to thank your interventions, I am taking notes of all the questions.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that thanks to the role of the sexologist and the doctor, this was really successful. It's a gynecologist, it's a woman, female gynecologist, and the male psychologist or sexologist does couples therapy. And sometimes with African men, they hear that a man can talk man to man, and that is really good because when women have these issues with their partner, it's not just about whether they want to do something or not. It's up to the man as well to want to keep the relationship going. And when they go to therapy with Felipe, with this male psychologist, when he says, look, you shouldn't be doing this, you should be doing this, then the women call me and they say, Aminata, wow, when Felipe talks to them, to the man, he really listens. My husband really listened to him, and it was great. And now our family unit is working much better. And also thanks to collaboration with Pharma Mundi within this project, we're going to train more women specializing in FGM to do the work that I do. So this is really rewarding for me, and it's really great news because I couldn't do it on my own. Because women who had undergone reconstruction would help me with translations, for example. Women from Senegal, sometimes there are ethnicities who do perform FGM, there are others who don't. And if they don't speak French or they don't speak Spanish, then these women would help me to translate from Wolof. And the same applies to Nigeria. And quite frankly, the name of the association is true. It really is a network of women supporting one another. And one called me just yesterday. She has also undergone the reconstruction and she supports me. And she said, Aminata, I'm going to get married. But since I can't go to Africa, then I'll do it in Valencia. And you will be my godmother. You will be the woman of the marriage. And that's what we do. We support each other. If someone needs to undergo an operation, and if it's a single working mother, then what I'll do is I will look after her children while she's doing the operation, so that she can go through the whole process. And if she has nowhere to go, then I will help, because sometimes we have these difficulties and it can be really difficult to support women who, for example, are asylum seekers, who have come to the end of the aid that they are entitled to, and they still don't have a job, they still don't have asylum. And if they decide to undergo the operation, they might be not entitled. So sometimes they come and they stay at my house. We do have difficulties, and I ask shelter homes often, but with all the pandemic and so on, it really has been extremely complex to find a place for them in these shelter homes. So they end up coming to my house, and it's like we're a big family and we help one another. And it's working really well. So thank you for your patience today. I am extremely nervous. Thank you, Aminata. I hope it has been clear anyway. Yes, well, you'll be able to speak later as well when there are questions. We're going to now give the floor to Mbaye Gil from the association who works in Bilbao in an intercultural mediation agency. Go ahead. We're listening to you. Okay, can you hear me? Yes, perfectly. Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this invitation. I think that after hearing from these wonderful women who spoke before me and who've been talking a bit about the work that they do and the suffering that a lot of these women undergo and what having undergone FGM has meant for them in their lives, seeing their battle really is breathtaking, and there's not very much I can add. I am a nurse. I come from Senegal. And I am an activist in the battle against FGM. I have been doing this for years. I've been working with UNAF and other institutions. And when I was invited to take part in this roundtable, I really just couldn't say no. I find myself unable to say no to UNAF and to anyone else in these events. What can I say? Well, Samira and Fatoumata and also Aminata have talked about the fact that we work as an organization, as an institution in the area of development and cooperation. But at a more local level, we work with migrants, and I, as a healthcare professional, have detected the need to begin to work with intercultural mediators in the healthcare system. The healthcare service has to include these professionals. It is important for them to be included in the system to really provide quality care, because we do give quality care to local population, but with migrant people, that care is not worse. It's not that the professionals don't do it well. It's that the system isn't ready to give them the care they need, because the type of care they need will differ when there is a migrant and when there is a local person. Then more specifically in relation to FGM, there's a lot of work to be done. It's not just a case of a woman who has suffered female genital mutilation. It is a migrant woman who, in addition to all of her previous suffering and to having had to go to a healthcare center and not being able to fully understand the professional who's talking to them, what that causes, what that will mean is that the next time they come to a healthcare center, she might think about it twice, because it is, let's say, like a self-restriction that they impose on themselves. Let's say that because she didn't get quality healthcare the first time, she thinks that going back to the healthcare service is not at all appealing. That's where our project for intercultural mediation in public services stemmed from, and we, as an organization, have launched this project in order to work with healthcare professionals, in this case in a hospital in Bilbao in primary healthcare with the Bilbao Basurto organization. And what this enables is that migrant people, not just victims of gender violence or of female genital mutilation, but also migrants on the whole and their social sanitary reality, because a woman who has survived FGM doesn't just need to be treated as a victim, because there is a background behind that woman that we have to try to understand. Because we know that the physical and psychological side effects that they suffer need to be understood. And then another thing we work on is to raise awareness among healthcare professionals regarding interculturality, regarding working with people from a different background. Because these professionals need to understand what it's like to work with someone from a different culture. If somebody understands the language and was born here in Spain, then I cannot deal with them in the same way as a person who has gone through the whole ordeal of migration and who doesn't comfortably understand my language. I cannot hope that that person will understand me as well as the neighbor across the road would. So our project is based on providing training for intercultural mediators in the healthcare service, and then from that point on, raising awareness among healthcare professionals as to the phenomenon of interculturality. And as Fatoumata mentioned, we live in a multicultural society, and that is never going to get less. It's always going to get greater. We're going to have new neighbors, new citizens coming in. Because it is no longer a case that three out of every 10 patients in healthcare centers come from a different place. It's no longer a case of just a few people, it's now 3 out of 10, and that's a lot of people. So in my work, I have detected this need, the need of raising awareness and providing this intercultural approach. Because I believe that we no longer just need translation or interpreting, because there are cultural aspects that a person who comes from Senegal may not be able to understand if the translation is provided by someone from Guinea. Their cultural aspects will differ radically. It's not the same to work, for example, with a Basque person as it is to work with someone from Madrid. It's because there are not just language barriers, there are sometimes cultural elements as well. Someone from the Basque country will experience things differently to someone from Madrid. These are the kind of things that I want to be taken into account, and I really want to insist with organizations, public organizations, public services, on working more specifically in these situations. So what we did is we presented our project, and the healthcare organization of Bilbao Basurto has accepted our proposal, and they're ready to get to work with us, because within the organization of Bilbao Basurto, there is a team of professionals who now work on female genital mutilation. And thanks to the support of that team, we can bring our intercultural mediation project to fruition. Because what I want to vindicate now is that all professionals who are here, who are listening to me, I want you to understand that it is us, we are the ones who have to fight for these services and ask for them. Because migrants, okay, they may feel ready to claim them, like Aminata, Fatoumata, like myself, and they do these things free and voluntarily. But these women have a life, they have other things to do. We need to professionalize this, because their work is not really recognized professionally. So, as healthcare professionals, it is our duty to insist to claim the need for these services in our healthcare centres, ensuring that the health care that we provide to people is truly of the top quality. We need to fight for equality, for equity in healthcare. And to do that, to achieve that, we need these intercultural mediators. And we have to work with them as the key figures that they are in their community, whether they come from Guinea, from Nigeria, or from Cameroon. What these mediators will do is they will mobilize people. As Fatoumata said, these cultural mediators will mobilize everyone in their area. For instance, in Valencia, if there is someone who is a reference in their community, they're going to really be able to call on others. And that is going to make the work of healthcare professionals much easier in working on detection and prevention of female genital mutilation and gender violence as a whole. Because if I have to provide healthcare for a Spanish woman who has suffered gender violence, it won't be quite the same as if I'm dealing with a migrant woman who has suffered this same violence, because we come from cultures where gender violence, where chauvinism is fully rooted in the culture, unlike it is in Spain. So we as healthcare professionals must understand that this is a real need. It is a genuine need that we need to vindicate. We need to ensure that these figures, these professionals exist in every healthcare centre. We need to work side by side with all of the existing organisations and associations. And what I'm saying is a huge challenge, because public organisations will struggle to recognise this figure. And there is something that people often say to me, which is when I present a project, they say, this sounds like a great party, but who's going to pay for it? Because the public administration is never going to pay for this service, at least not for the first 1, 2, 3 years. So that is where private institutions come in. We need to help to provide these professionals in the healthcare centres for migrant populations. That way we work side by side with associations, organizations like UNAF, or any other association that is willing to work shoulder to shoulder with public organizations, public institutions, hospitals, healthcare centers, clinics, insisting on the fact that this is a need. This interculturality is going to get greater and greater, and our project will be launched after summer. And the idea we have is to train intercultural mediators, men and women, in different languages to try and enable this form of care, because the greater the quality of care, the better the women will feel. Just like these women felt really happy and really great after their reconstruction process, but there is a whole procedure before that reconstruction. Someone has to explain to them what female genital mutilation reconstruction involves. How can I tell them about it, though, if they don't understand me? So like I say, there is a whole series of steps, a whole process that has to be comprehensive. It has to take into account all of the different details and steps so that we can fight to have these figures included. We as small NGOs can do this, but we also need to be backed by healthcare professionals. It doesn't matter what community we come from or what region we're in. We need to understand that quality healthcare depends on having references, people who are a benchmark for the migrant community. Now, I don't know if I have overdone my time. I'm sorry. No, you are within your time, your allocated time slot. Is there anything else you'd like to say? You've got a few minutes left. Or we can go on to the round table. Well, I just want to say congratulations because everybody is doing a great job. UNAF as well. And so I'm going to now let my other peers speak. And if anyone has any questions for me, then I'll be happy to answer them later. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for sticking to your time. Thank you for your content. We're now going to hear from Toks Okeniyi, who is a representative of Forward Foundation for Women's Health Research and Development. This is a reference organization in everything. It's a benchmark in everything linked to female genital mutilation in the UK. Go ahead, Toks. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Okay, it looks like you can hear me. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if you can hear me properly.
It's okay.
Okay, you can hear me. All right. Good morning, everyone. I would like to share a PowerPoint. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to try and talk about, my organization, and then I take it from there. Hopefully, I intend to stick to the 20 minutes, which is already fast going now. I hope you can see that. Okay. Yes. At Forward is an African diaspora organization in the UK, and we work on FGM, child marriage, and all violence against women and girls matters. Our vision, which is very key to us, is a world where African women and girls live in dignity, are healthy, and have equal rights. So we have 4 pillars of what we do, our work, and you've said a lot, all the amazing speakers have said a lot about that already. And these are, training mediators, or we call them peer educators or community champions. And these include men and women. Training professionals, campaigning and advocacy. We campaign and advocate to, lawmakers in the UK, and also psychosocial support and counseling for women. This is our kind of a model that we use. We have our survival community, and we approach it from, working with the health sector and other professionals, the legal aspects of it, and also, you would say, police and other safeguarding entities. What's quite key to our work is training professionals. Our professionals receive training on different issues. We train peer educators, and our campaigning is we devise tools. A lot of that, for example, earlier on, we had quite a fantastic one that I think Aminata was talking about. I would really love to look at that video later. And these are some of our peer educators. So what do we do? How do we do this? Community advocates, we provide leadership and training skills for them. And this is to enable them go out into the community to bridge cultural and language gaps, and also to work with migrants and refugees, who are primarily our community that we serve. And in order for us to do what we do, this is how we do it. We have to work in a multi-agency partnership approach with other organizations and professionals. We provide safe spaces for women, and we support women affected by FGM and other violence against women and girls. Something that's quite key with the people that come to us is when a woman comes and tells you their story, then you realize that it's not just FGM. they are affected by multiple forms of trauma. Sometimes a woman has been trafficked into the UK, she has faced domestic abuse, and then she's also a victim of FGM. And therefore, you cannot just deal with the FGM, you have to take them holistically. So we have, we work with the media to try to engage with them, to use the right language. It is very, very important to work with religious leaders as well as other faith leaders to get an inroad into their communities. We also build bridges with frontline health workers, and I've spoken about our champions earlier on, and most importantly, community outreach events and working with men. Because without working with men, we cannot end this act of FGM. Because in most communities, yes, the women are the matriarchs who hold this practice, but they say they do it for men. And so what we say to men is, look, you need to be part of this conversation so that it is not done in your name. And the key way that we go about doing this is providing a culturally nuanced training about FGM. Who are we talking about? How is it that women that we've heard that earlier on about the challenges of migrant women and refugees, and it's the same here. So we go at it from the cultural perspective, because when you look at this iceberg here, the tip is quite visible, and only 10% of a person's culture is obvious when you talk about FGM or other violence against women and girls. The key aspects of the foundations of that person's culture, their values, their norms, the unconscious bias, feelings, taboo, are what makes us us. So 90% of engagement is based on the bottom part of this iceberg. And this is how we speak to professionals, that you need to understand the unconscious bias in the way you engage with communities in the UK. And in order for you to do that well, you need to understand how to communicate effectively and interact with people across cultures. In order to do that, you have to be, as a professional, regardless of where you're from, you have to be culturally competent so that you don't create more problems for women to access specialist services like an FGM clinic and health services and so on and so forth. So you need to gain knowledge of the different cultural practices and have a better worldview. You need to be aware of your own, biases and worldview, develop a positive attitude towards cultural differences, and develop skills to communicate and interact across cultures. So we tell professionals, statutory bodies, you need to have the appropriate skills, behaviors, and policies that ensure that you have a service that is appropriate to those that need it. As forward, we don't believe that communities are hard to reach. We know that actually it is some organizations and statutory bodies that are very, very hard to access. And we work every day trying to ensure we can make it easier for communities to access services when they need it. Of course, we had issues during COVID, and we had to start thinking of how we can deliver our work differently. We found out a lot more about women who had, in the UK, we call it no recourse to public funds, meaning they have no immigration status. They are existing on the margins of society, and they are affected by FGM and so many other issues. And therefore, how do we ensure that they get the right support? The best way we did that was to walk through our community, mediators. They knew what was happening on the ground. They went to talk to them, they spoke to them, and we engaged mostly online, to help them find things like, mobile phones, data, laptops, top up their phones, and vouchers. So many little things. Some of them, something as simple, one would think, as having a coat when it's cold. Some things we provided for them. We also provide legal advice. We ensure that this is provided in a safe and comfortable environment. A lot of these women don't have access to any kind of appropriate, I would say, and good legal support. So we encourage them to come and talk to us about FGM and other related issues. And we give advice on family law and immigration issues and crime related to anything that they are, might be affecting them or that they are involved with. So I'm going to kind of stop sharing and continue to say, I was just rushing through that. The key thing that we work on, or we try to make sure we do, is to really work in a multi-agency way. We can't do it on our own. We work with communities, we go to communities, we utilize our community mediators and champions to talk, to translate. For example, when I talked about the legal advice, when we will, before, oh, the last slide, I'll share that again. Okay. Bear with me, somebody wants me to share the last slide. Okay, I think it's this slide you mean. Yeah, so I will just continue talking anyway. So when we do this, before we do this legal advice clinic, we would actually have a community coffee morning. And in that coffee morning, we would have either a barrister or a solicitor who will be there. We would also have our own community mediators, we call community champions, who would be speaking in other languages. And they would then translate when needed, or break down, maybe something that's been said that the women don't understand. After that coffee morning, the women also would ask questions. The idea of this coffee morning is to make them more at ease with the solicitors and barristers, and to understand that they are in a safe space. So the women then tell us, okay, I want to see the lawyer for this issue or the other, and then we book them an appointment to see the legal person in our own accommodation. During COVID, we did that online, and now we do it on a kind of a hybrid, depending on what is appropriate. We do it online and also face-to-face. I will stop sharing now. I think maybe, hopefully, you've seen all that. So in essence, what we're trying to do is to bridge that gap where women and men as well within the communities do not know how to advance their issues, especially regarding how they've been treated, something to do with FGM, and so many other aspects of it. But what is quite key, I think, in most of what we do, is ensuring that we have the right understanding of what is going on the ground at every particular point in time, so that we can respond appropriately. We always also make sure that we have representatives of our communities on our board, in our service provision, we have a Young Women's Advisory Council with community women, young women in there. We also have a community advisory group with women. And I will stop there because, it's just a snapshot of what we do. And if you have any questions later on, I will be happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tok, for your timing speech. And thanks for waiting for the colloquium. Okay. Bueno, En este momento, por tanto, ya podemos empezar el coloquio.
Now we can open the discussion. As you can see, we are on time. We have 20 or nearly 30 minutes. And the main issues that have been put on the table were the following. You can answer the different questions little by little. First questions concerns the role of men, not only in the process of the reconstruction of clitoris or the women genital organs, but in global, the role of men within the process. This is a question that has been reiterated by different attendees. Then there is the role or the work that can be done with the origin communities from the African countries. And another question is, how can we manage to have sustainability in the projects through hiring or cooperating with non-governmental organizations made by women and with hospitals and health services. With regard to this last question, I have to say that in Catalonia, for the last 15 years, we've already had engagements with the public administration so that they hire mediators with the Association Health and Family. And then we work with intercultural mediators, not only from African origin, in the hospitals and in other health services. They are paid by Salut Familia, and this association receives the funding from the hospital or from the public health service. So we establish a stable relationship for mediators, and this is something that is already available in Spain. They do not work only in the field of female genital mutilation, but they work as professionals, health professionals. They have a working time of approximately 20 hours a week, and they receive all kinds of patients from the community. Now, we can answer these questions, and we are open to other possible questions. But to sum up, the main questions were concerning the role of men, the cooperation with origin communities, and the funding, which is very important for the sustainability of projects. And these are the three main issues mentioned by the audience. So you are invited to make your remarks or to answer these questions. You can just open your microphone whenever you need.
Gracias. Lo que estaba comentando, he escuchado los exponentes que estaban comentando sobre todo, que estaban hablando de lo de la mutilación genital femenina, y también que están preguntando por los hombres, ¿no? Me imagino que gustarían saber de este tema, porque ese
about the men, and this is something that I see as well in my daily work, and there's a short sentence that I would like to share. I come from Guinea, Conakry. Aminata comes from Mali. My other colleague comes from Senegal, and they are perhaps more free. They have more freedom, both inside their country and outside their countries. But in my case, I can express myself outside my country and I can be guided, but in my country, I can't, because the work that I do is a taboo. And the women struggle, but the men prevent it altogether. And so that's what's linked to the question you've asked, the men. Because the men, in the first place, the men don't want women to understand their rights. They don't want their women to know what they want. They don't want them to understand that they have needs and the ability to express them and to live at ease the way they would like to. Men want them to be submissive and to be under their control. It's chauvinism. And that's what I've seen when women come to me. But before coming to me, they have had to go through a great struggle and a series of sessions. That's why this comprehensive care is so important, to ensure that they feel comfortable enough to express themselves so that I can help them about this topic. Otherwise, I cannot help them. And I appreciate what Mbaye had said about the challenges and the needs, and about conveying them to the healthcare professionals, because I come from Guinea, and the first thing that is done by a professional is, I mean, it's important what professionals do, but the very first thing we need is to speak to a human being. Sometimes professionals are so formal, they're so qualified. We are lucky enough to have a great team in UNAF, and we work together, united. We have a really great organization, and we're all really happy with the jobs and the work that we do. But there are still challenges to be overcome, and I think we're getting there. So I want to say thank you, and I hope that I've answered some of the questions, and perhaps others of my colleagues, my peers, can answer now. So would anybody else like to make any observations regarding collaboration or the position of men in relation to female genital mutilation? Hello? Yes. Yes, I think that collaboration with men is fundamental in this whole process. That's why we do try to involve the men. And by raising awareness among men, a lot of them are beginning to understand and to support me quite significantly. And on the 8th of March, I was given an award by the Town Council of Al-Fafar for the work that I do. And truly, men have supported me greatly. They have congratulated me. And some men have reached out to me. And they have tried to talk their women into undergoing the operation. But then at the same time, there are men who forbid their women to undergo reconstruction. So, well, I'm not sure. It's a bit so-so. On the one hand, I'm raising awareness among women. On the other, I'm raising awareness among men.
Muy interesante. Esto es un
That's
gran
very interesting, and it really is an indicator of the good intercultural job that you do, of getting the men on board and ensuring that the men see you as a leader and as a reference too. Exactly, because often it's not that they don't want to help or to embrace anything, it's that they don't understand. They have the impression that if a woman undergoes the reconstruction, she's going to go chasing after other men. And I always say to them, I'm an example, I'm married. Have you ever seen me chasing after other men? No, that's not the way it is. The change simply consists in women feeling pleasure too, and having healthy sexual relationships that are pain-free. And when you explain things properly to them, they understand. And the women too. That's why it's so important that Felipe, this male psychologist, is doing the work that he's doing in raising awareness among the men and women, because not all of them underwent the operation when they were just a week old. I had no idea what happened, who did it, what circumstances I was in, but there are some women, when they are talked about female genital mutilation, when someone mentions it, they cover their genitals and they say, no, 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 because they can remember what happened, who did it, where they were. And they think that going through the reconstruction will make them relive the experience. And I say to them, that's not it at all. The reconstruction is the exact opposite. It's a type of surgery because they've only taken off a small part of the tip of your clitoris, but the clitoris measures 12 to 14 centimeters and it is inside your body. So what they do is they remove the scar tissue, they bring out healthy tissue, and thanks to that healthy tissue, it will become sensitive when you touch it. And when you explain it to them, then they understand. And then they take the step to go and do reconstruction. But in the work that I'm doing, I love it so much, but you have to be really patient because they ask about absolutely all the details because there is so much misinformation. They have so many wrong ideas, but with patience, a lot of patience, and talking through the whole thing, they get to understand it. And that's when they start to enjoy it and to really thank you and raise awareness among other women. And there's also the difficulty that sometimes some women don't mind. They're happy to talk about it and to raise awareness among others, but others don't want anyone to know that they have done the reconstruction. So little by little, working with them and building up their self-esteem, they manage to speak out publicly and share their experiences. Thank you very much. I think more than misinformation, what we could say is that both men and women need to start a new conversation about their sexual experiences and about their own bodies. It's not just, as you very well know, Aminata, it's not just a case of misinformation. It's about daring to spark this new conversation, to do it gently and openly, and to have the guidance of someone from their own culture with a lot of patience. Exactly, yes. And it's like being taught about sexuality all over again. Because for us as Muslims, masturbation, for example, just the mere mention of it, they say, oh, no, 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 that's not allowed. It's forbidden. That's not something I do. And of course, if you're not familiar with your own body, how can you tell someone how you want it to be touched? And so we have to go one step at a time. And I'd like to add something. Yes. Yes, please go ahead. I'm afraid the sound has gone. Oh, yes. I'm back. Yes, in terms of mutilation, you said that you underwent it during the first year of life, so you don't remember it. But for us, when someone mentions FGM, it brings back all the memories. So when I talk about it, I get very nervous, even if I don't want to, even though I've been doing this for years. It's like a sensation that comes back to me, like reliving the moment. But what we're doing is helping other women because most of us are based here in Madrid. And so most of the women we are detecting, they don't even know what type of FGM they've undergone, what difficulties it entails. And so I inform them because I'm a specialist in FGM. But I think that's a job that the healthcare professionals should be doing as soon as they start dealing with these women, because presumably they will need gynecological care. But when they finally detect it, I mean, sometimes they don't even know. Sometimes they have no idea what FGM is. But they ought to be able to explain to these women what type of FGM they have had, what difficulties and what consequences it entails in the long term. But there are not enough explanations about this. I've been here for 17 years, and in all of the consultations that I've been in, they've never explained to me, or they've never even asked me about what I have undergone. And the same with my peers. So I think we're talking about fighting against FGM, but not just within our own teams, but we need the professionals to do it too, because they're going to see gynecologists, they're going to see doctors, and with that approach, then these professionals could help them too. Yes, you're absolutely right, because in one of my speeches here in Valencia, every year they do training for healthcare professionals in the field of FGM through the unit that I work with and through the Aminata network. And one day during one of my speeches, someone said, she said, I work with women and I thought it was just a deformity. I didn't know that it was FGM, and that was despite the fact that she was a midwife. So she was unable to advise this woman as to what she should or could do or not. So what you've said is really important. Giving professionals the training they need. In 2013, when I wanted to undergo my reconstruction, things were different to now. So gradually, bit by bit, every year, more healthcare professionals are receiving training. And today in Valencia, there is much more awareness. There is much more knowledge about FGM. And when they see a woman who has been ablated, they will refer her to me maybe, and that helps me to support them. Often it's not that women don't trust the doctors. It's the fact that they want to talk to someone else who has already done it because it's new to them. And they think, when something is being cut off, how can it grow back? Or how can it come back? But that's what I'm there for in the clinic with them, to share my experience and how I've lived the whole process. It gives them a lot of confidence, because sometimes even if the doctor explains it to them really well, if they don't speak to someone who's done it before, they don't really trust them. And they're right, I suppose, to do that. And that's why intercultural mediators are still a really relevant function. And all of you peers, I think you should do the reconstruction. It's great. Well, thank you very much once again. It's clear that all of the work that is being done, especially when there has been an ablation, there is often a trauma, and whether you remember it or not, there is a need to train professionals. And that, of course, does not exclude the fact that they also need these references, these women who have done the process successfully after female genital mutilation. I think we could now go on to address a question that is closely linked to the previous question, which is how to financially achieve sustainability and institutionally as well for intercultural mediation in the broadest sense, both concerning FGM specifically, which is the topic that concerns us today, and concerning, well, generally any other forms of violence that people from Africa may have suffered, to ensure that there is intercultural mediation that is available to people of African origin or of Muslim origin more broadly. I'd like to hear your opinions, but especially your experiences, if there are any. Experiences other than those that have already been mentioned, or any recommendations, because this is clearly the challenge that we have. If the government were to change, then Aminata program would disappear maybe, or other programs that are already working successfully. I would just like to say, oh, we can't see you, Mbaye. Could you turn on your camera? Sorry. Right, well, I think there is work to be done, because a lot of associations manage to get funding through private institutions, and that is what makes it possible to achieve sustainability in this service, but with very few people, because once this funding comes through, you need to get training for a lot of people, and then you need to hire people. So there's a team in Madrid that works in this area, and if you provide training for 10 people, you can't hire all 10 of them because that would not be sustainable. So what you do is you hire a few of them, a small group, and then establish one-off collaborations with the others to keep them motivated, because you can't just provide them with the training and then say, and we don't need you anymore. In order to achieve public funding, you have to be able to prove to the public healthcare service that this project is worth the investment and that the resources are being used correctly. And if you say to them, look, you've been using this service for free, now we need you to support it financially. And that's often the problem that we face in terms of the sustainability of these projects. And with a lot of them, sustainability required to achieve sustainability, you have to have private funding on the one hand to hold up part of the project and keep it going until you eventually get public funding to perpetuate this funding. But what I have to do first is to prove that the service is going to be available to them for a few years until they are convinced that the project is useful and that they've been using it and that their own professionals have been using it. Because if that service is only used by migrants, by people of migrant origin, and they say, okay, this service is requested by the Association of Guinean Women or the Association of African Women of Madrid, for instance, or from wherever, then it doesn't count. It is until the professionals themselves use the service. They just think, this is something that migrants want or that migrants need, and I'm not really using it. So the public institutions need to realize that the people who need it and use it most are the actual healthcare professionals. That will make the project successful. Because I could claim it from my association, but it needs to be the professional who says that they need it. They need to know that this service is available, and they need to insist that they want to use it. So the sustainability of the project depends on all of this. It depends on it being used. And it's what I said before. If I'm going to sell a product, if I'm going to sell the party, like I was mentioning before, they're going to say, wow, yeah, sounds like a great party. Who's going to pay for it? So that's really important. They need to know who's going to pay for it. Very well, okay. Well, in my experience, that 15-year experience, the difficulty sometimes is that if we only talk about FGM, if you only offer services for FGM, we're never going to break this glass ceiling. We need to offer services for the African community on the whole. And that way, I think we might be able to get the funding. I think Valencia will put forward their opinion now. They might then provide public funding in a specific hospital where there is an African population, because you may know that healthcare services work in specific regional areas.
Todo no lo vamos a resolver en este coloquio, pero que...
And I don't think this is an issue that we can solve now in this just one-day event, but and certainly you can't each do it on your own just as people of African origin, but I think that UNAF and Salut y Familia could really play a crucial role in providing you with support towards that sustainability. But what I think is you need to be open to more than just one specific problem. If you say that your cause is just one problem, then no one is going to provide you with the funding, not because it's an African issue. I could give you an example of a Spanish issue as well. There are people of Spanish origin who are trying to encourage suitable treatments in hospitals for rare diseases. And so those people are very few, but they are Spaniards who've had to come together, and they've all had to come together from all different kinds of rare diseases, because if they fought for just one rare disease, they would never get support from the governments or from the healthcare services. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Yes, and I would like to add something along these lines about projects. I have an association of women from Guinea-Conakry, and there are about 70 women here in Madrid in my association, but I am now understanding, based on what you've said, because I work with other associations too. I collaborate with UNAF, Voces, Doctors of the World, but given this situation that you're explaining, alone, I don't think we're going to be able to access the services, just like you said. But we would have to find a space in which we can express what we need and express how we're going to sustain ourselves. And then secondly, in my country, I come from Guinea-Conakry, women get married at the age of 15 or 16, whereas here, most women come over because they've been brought by their husbands and so on. And that's a situation where perhaps they could fight, because, for instance, I'm fighting for FGM, or against FGM rather, and I could reach out to other groups and try to understand their needs and see how I can help them, because they often don't have the knowledge, they don't understand their rights. And this leads us to think, I'm going to give up because I don't know what I'm doing. Yes, that's true, yes. Okay, very well. I think Samira has a raised hand. The floor is yours. Yes, well, I think Melissa was first. Well, go ahead anyway. And Melissa can speak afterwards. Okay, I'm going to be quite quick anyway. This mediation service is quite attractive to a lot of times, but we need to think about where the funds should come from to make this service work. And we need to really fight to make the importance of these resources understood in public institutions, especially in public institutions and larger organizations in this sector. Because then that way we could try to include intercultural mediators among the professionals in the National Healthcare Service. We've also, just a moment ago, heard about, why we shouldn't be too specific. Why should we only focus on FGM? Well, often when we go to the doctor, they say to us, hey, do you only deal with cases of FGM? And I say, well, I wish we could cover all kinds of specializations to help absolutely anyone to work with an intercultural mediator if they need one. This is just our starting point. We're starting from FGM. We're trying to professionalize FGM, professionalize intercultural mediation for FGM, but ultimately we want this to be broadened to all specializations of healthcare. Okay, Melissa, the floor is yours. Thank you. I just wanted to point out that we are aware of the need and the contributions of intercultural mediators, but it would appear that these are professionals that that although we ask for them a lot, the professional healthcare services see them only as someone who's necessary in the short term. And so they consider that it's a great expense in comparison to what they can provide. Whereas I think that the expense that they involve is very low, actually, because there are so many medical visits that are not satisfactory because there are complications, because people don't understand themselves, because there's a lack of intercultural mediators, because often information gets lost. And perhaps this patient won't know who they have to go to. They will, for example, skip an appointment, a costly appointment, because there are certain appointments that are really expensive if they are left uncovered. Whereas if you hired an intercultural mediator, you would be able to avoid these wasted spaces, these wasted expenses. If all you're thinking about in FGM reconstruction is surgery and that everything else should be done in the private department, we're completely wrong, because this reconstruction is not just a physical reconstruction of the damage, it's a whole type of comprehensive work. And so I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and that's a bit of a criticism towards the system on my behalf, because intercultural mediators are more and more necessary, and we're hearing that need more and more and louder and louder. Nerea, the floor is yours. Well, thank you so much. I agree entirely with all of the contributions made by all of the colleagues that we've been hearing from, including Melissa. And what Elvira said is very important too. The challenge, I think, lies in that a lot of the commitment on behalf of institutions is different. They're not all equally committed at the local level. And in some cases, it's very difficult to even set up these channels. For example, in Catalonia, it has been relatively more simple, but in other territories, it's more difficult, and we're really fighting for it. And UNAF is working to achieve that, to try and do social and political advocacy. And I think we need to rethink which professional figures need to be included in the healthcare department. If there are social workers, why should there not be intercultural mediators included in the official lists of professionals? So I'm just using the example of social workers, but I think that there should be an institutional framework at the national level to support this. Because if we leave everything up to the local authorities, then it's always going to depend on the government, the council of the moment. And we need to also highlight that there are a lot of different mediation initiatives, and all of them, all the ones we've heard from here today, are really interesting. And in a lot of cases, intercultural mediation is done by telephone. Or sometimes there is a bit of confusion between what is intercultural mediation and what is linguistic mediation. And I think that it's quite difficult, it's quite different. We all know that we're talking about intercultural mediation, but sometimes there is a mix-up between the two concepts. It's important to have gender perspective, and it's important for them to know how the healthcare system works. There's so many things that need to be done in intercultural mediation. It is not an easy job. And those mediators, you have a very tough job. It requires a lot of engagement, and that needs to be acknowledged professionally. I think a quantum leap needs to be achieved there. Right, well, thank you very much. I think we're going to start wrapping up. After having heard from all of you, my proposal as a member of the UNAF Board of Management and of Directors, that the reproductive and sexual health program of UNAF should take care of putting together a working group that could really deepen all of this and actually pick up the baton and foster the creation of this intercultural mediator professional, trying to build bridges that are funded sustainably, especially in the public healthcare system. That would be my proposal. And so I'm just going to throw it out there as a proposal for UNAF. There has been a lot of mention in the chat box of people who have said, well, healthcare services or social services need to get on board, but I think it's particularly healthcare services. People have complained that they only hire organizations with experience. And of course, that's true. So we need to be able to prove the experience and financial solvency of the initiatives. We're not going to be able to change that because procurement law in all of Europe is based on these principles of experience. So we need to consider how we can progress based on the rich diaspora that we have and channel all of this towards a future that hopefully is just around the corner. We do have a multicultural society, and hopefully mediators will be sustainably integrated in healthcare institutions. Mediators, and most of them are female mediators, they are cultural ambassadors that enable both women and men to really feel more at home. It is them who are able to give confidence and space for affected women, which is important because a lot of healthcare professionals who have not yet developed any competencies, any intercultural competencies, don't provide this safe space for women. They just say, hey, look, I need you to understand the information I'm giving you. So all they think they need is a translation service, not an intercultural mediation service. But you have proven, you as mediators have proven, especially in the specific case of FGM, that you are able to assess the situation of the woman and guide her through the whole process. So now I'd just like to bring this to an end by mentioning the absolutely crucial contribution that can be made to progress in comprehensive care and raising awareness against FGM by all of these women's organizations, because they have the experience, they have the horizons. There are organizations of women, a lot of which are specializing in African women, and they've decided to take a step forward and to become part of the collective will to progress. A lot of them include women of migrant origin, or even the majority are women of migrant origin, and they have undergone a process of transformation that is vital. Aminata's case is an example, but you should never forget, quite the opposite, you should never forget your background. Women who have lived in disquieting or even traumatic experiences have developed resilience, and in some cases, like in the examples we've heard about today, they have become intercultural mediators and leaders. They have taught us, and they will continue to teach us, that action and solidarity can heal, can cure fear. They are our lighthouses, and we should always follow them. So thank you to all of you. We, as the Union of Family Associations, are called upon now to fight towards a union and an institutionalization, in the hope that in the relatively near future, we can make a step forwards in making this type of project more sustainable. Thank you very much. Today's event is now concluded. This roundtable is concluded, and I want to invite everyone, all of the women and also the men who are taking part tomorrow, to join us. Tomorrow on the 6th of April, sadly, I will not be with you. I will not be able to join you, but you will be in very good hands from 10 o'clock to 12:45. We will have Ascensión Iglesias as the president of UNAF opening the event, and there will be a roundtable moderated by Pedro Pablo Madera Parral, to talk about all of the best practice in community intervention. in a variety of points all across Spain, Fuerteventura, Madrid. There will also be an expert from Dublin who we will be hearing from, and the UNAF will be there too. So we're going to provide, take a closer look at especially African communities. And then finally, on the last round table of the day, the discussion will be about public agenda, challenges, claims, and new proposals to consolidate and make these projects, this intercultural mediation, more sustainable, especially in the field of FGM, but also, as we have mentioned, at a more broader and intersectoral level. So we look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. Thank you very, very much for joining us. We can now say goodbye and disconnect. Our time is up. It's 1:20. We have adhered to the time schedule, which is always something people are grateful for. It's been very productive. So that's all. Thank you very much and see you tomorrow.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.